Further, when his mind completely merges with emptiness, his four limbs will suddenly become like grass or wood, devoid of sensation even when burned by fire or cut with a knife. The burning of fire will not make his limbs hot, and even when his flesh is cut, it will be like wood being whittled. This state is called the merging of external states and the blending of the four elements into a uniform substance. It is a temporary state and does not indicate sagehood. If he does not think he has become a sage, then this will be a good state. But if he considers himself a sage, then he will be vulnerable to the demon's influence. Further, when his mind accomplishes such purity that his skill is purifying the mind has reached its ultimate, he will suddenly see the earth, the mountains, and the rivers in the 10 directions turn into Buddha lands replete with the 7 precious things, their light shining everywhere. He will also see Buddhas, Tathagatas, as many as the sands of the Ganges, filling all of space. He will also see pavilions and palaces that are resplendent and beautiful. He will see the house below and the celestial palaces above, all without obstruction. This state is called the gradual transformation of concentrated thoughts of fondness and loathing. It does not indicate sagehood. If he does not think he has become a sage, then this will be a good state. But if he considers himself a sage, then he will be vulnerable to the demon's influence. Further, as the person uses his mind to investigate that is profound and far away, he will suddenly be able to see distant places in the middle of the night. He will see city markets and community wells, streets and alleys, and relatives and friends, and he may hear their conversations. This state is called having been suppressed to the utmost, the mind flies out and sees much that had been blocked from view. It does not indicate sagehood. If he does not think he has become a sage, then this will be a good state. But if he considers himself a sage, then he will be vulnerable to the demon's influence. Further, as the person uses his mind to investigate to the utmost point, he may see a good and wise advisor whose body undergoes changes. Within a brief interval, various transformations will occur which cannot be explained. This state is called having an improper mind, which is possessed by a lead ghost, a May ghost, or a celestial demon, and without reason speaking Dharma that fathoms wondrous truths. It does not indicate sagehood. If he does not think he has become a sage, then the demonic formations will subside. But if he considers himself a sage, then he will be vulnerable to the demon's influence. Ananda, these 10 states may occur in dhyana as one's mental effort interacts with the form skandha. Dull and confused living beings do not evaluate themselves. Encountering such situations in their confusion, they fail to recognize them and say that they have become sages, thereby uttering a great lie. They will fall into the relentless hells. In the Dharma ending age, after the Tathagatas enters Nirvana, all of you should rely on and proclaim this teaching. Do not let the demons of the heavens have their way. Offer protection so all can realize the unsurpassed way. Ananda, when a good person who is cultivating samadhi and shamatha has put an end to the form skandha, he can see the mind of all Buddhas as if seeing an image reflected in a clear mirror. He seems to have obtained something, but he cannot use it. In this, he resembles a paralyzed person. His hands and feet are intact. His seeing and hearing are not distorted, and yet his mind has come under a deviant influence so that he is unable to move. This is the region of the feeling skandha. Once the problem of paralysis subsides, his mind can then leave his body and look back upon his face. It can go or stay as it pleases without further hindrance. This is the end of the feeling skandha. This person can then transcend the turbidity of views, contemplating the cause of the feeling skandha. One sees that false thoughts of illusory clarity are its source. Ananda, in this situation, the good person experiences a brilliant light. As a result of the excessive internal pressure in his mind, he is suddenly overwhelmed with such boundless sadness that he looks upon even mosquitoes and gadflies as newborn children. He is filled with pity and unconsciously bursts into tears. This is called overexertion in suppressing the mind in the course of cultivation. If he understands that, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. If he realizes that he remains unconfused, then after a time it will disappear. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of sadness will enter his mind. Then, as soon as he sees someone, he will feel sad and cry uncontrollably. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, Ananda, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. At that time, he has a sublime version and is overwhelmed with gratitude. In this situation, he suddenly evinces tremendous courage. His mind is bold and keen. He resolves to equal all Buddhas and says he can transcend 3 asamkhya's of ends in a single thought. This is called being too anxious to excel in cultivation. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. If he realizes that and remains unconfused, then after a time it will disappear. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of insanity will enter his mind. As soon as he sees someone, he will boast about himself. He will become extraordinarily haughty to the point that he recognizes no Buddha above him and no pupil below him. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. With no new realization immediately ahead of him and having lost his former status as well, his power of wisdom weakens and he enters an impasse in which he sees nothing to anticipate. Suddenly, a feeling of tremendous monotony and thirst arises in his mind. At all times, he is fixated in memories that do not disperse. He mistakes this for a sign of diligence and vigor. This is called cultivating the mind but losing oneself due to a lack of wisdom. If he understands that, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of memory will enter his mind. Day and night it will hold his mind suspended in one place. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. His wisdom becomes stronger than his samadhi and he mistakenly becomes impetuous. Cherishing the supremacy of his nature, he imagines that he is a Nishyanda Buddha and rests content with his minor achievement. This is called applying the mind, but straying away from constant examination and becoming preoccupied with ideas and opinions. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a lowly demon that is easily satisfied will enter his mind. As soon as he sees someone, he will announce, I have realized the unsurpassed absolute truth. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. He has not yet obtained any results, and his prior state of mind has already disappeared. Surveying the two extremes, he feels that he is in great danger. Suddenly he becomes greatly distraught, as if he were seated on the iron bed, or as if he has taken poison. He has no wish to go on living, and he is always asking people to take his life so he can be released sooner. This is called cultivating but not understanding expedience. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of chronic depression will enter his mind. He may take up knives and swords and cut his own flesh, happily giving up his life. Or else, driven by constant anxiety, he may flee into the wilderness and be unwilling to see people. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha, understands the feeling skandha. He dwells in this purity, his mind is tranquil and at ease. Suddenly, a feeling of boundless joy wells up in him. There is such bliss in his mind that he cannot contain it. This is called experiencing lightness and ease, but lacking the wisdom to control it. If he understands it, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon that lacks happiness will enter his mind. As soon as he sees someone, he will laugh. He will sing and dance in the streets. He will say that he has already attained unobstructed liberation. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. He says he is already satisfied. Suddenly, a feeling of unreasonable intense self-satisfaction may arise in him. It may include pride, outrageous pride, haughty pride, overweening pride, and pride based on inferiority, all of which occur at once. In his mind, he even looks down on the Tathagatas of the 10 directions, how much the more so on the lesser positions of hearers and those enlightened by conditions. This is called viewing oneself as supreme, but lacking the wisdom to save oneself. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of intense arrogance will enter his mind. He will not bow to stupas or in temples. He will destroy sutras and images. He will say to the Dhanapatis, these are gold, bronze, clay, or wood. The sutras are just leaves or cloth. The flesh body is what is real and eternal, but you don't revere it. Instead, you venerate clay and wood. That is totally absurd. Those who have deep faith in him will follow him to destroy the images or bury them. He will mislead living beings. so that they fall into the relentless house. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. In his refined understanding, he awakens completely to subtle principles. Everything is in accord with his wishes. He may suddenly experience limitless lightness and ease in his mind. He may say that he has become a sage and attained great self-mastery. This is called attaining lightness and clarity due to wisdom. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon that lacks lightness and clarity will enter his mind, claiming that he is already satisfied. He will not strive to make further progress. For the most part, such cultivators will become like an unlearned bhikshu. He will mislead living beings so that they will fall into the avashi hell. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. In that clear awakening, he experiences an illusory clarity. With that, suddenly he may veer towards the view of eternal extinction, deny cause and effect, and take everything as empty. The thought of emptiness so predominates that he comes to believe that there is eternal extinction after death. This is called the mental state of samadhi resolving, so that one loses sight of what is right. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of emptiness will enter his mind. He will slander the holding of precepts, calling it a small vehicle dharma. He will say, since Bodhisattvas have awakened to emptiness, what is there to hold or violate? This person, in the presence of his faithful Dhanapatis, will often drink wine, eat meat, and engage in wanton lust. The power of the demon will keep his followers from doubting or denouncing him. After the ghost has possessed him for a long time, he may consume excrement and urine, or meat and wine, claiming that all such things are empty. He will break the Buddha's moral precepts and mislead people into committing offenses. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Further, in this state of samadhi, the good person sees the disintegration of the form skandha and understands the feeling skandha. He savors the state of illusory clarity, and it deeply enters his mind and bones. Boundless love may suddenly well forth from his mind. When that love becomes extreme, he goes insane with greed and lust. This is called when an agreeable state of samadhi enters one's mind, lacking the wisdom to control oneself and mistakenly engaging in lustful behavior. If he understands, then there is no error. This experience does not indicate sagehood. But if he considers himself a sage, then a demon of desire will enter his mind. He will become an outspoken advocate of lust, calling it the way to Bodhi. He will teach his lay followers to indiscriminately engage in acts of lust, calling those who commit acts of lust his Dharmahyas. The power of spirits and ghosts in the ending age will enable him to attract a following of ordinary naive people numbering 100, 200, 5 or 600, or as many as 1,000 or 10,000. When the demon becomes bored, it will leave the person's body. Once the person's charisma is gone, he will run afoul of the law. He will mislead living beings so that they fall into the relentless house. Lacking proper samadhi, he will certainly fall. Ananda. All 10 of these states may occur in dhyana as one's mental effort interacts with the feeling skandha. Dull and confused living beings do not evaluate themselves. Encountering such situations, in their confusion they fail to recognize them and say that they have become sages, thereby uttering a great lie. They will fall into the relentless house. In the Dharma ending age, after my nirvana, all of you should pass on the Tathagata's teaching so that all living beings can awaken to their meaning. Do not let the demons of the heavens have their way. Offer protection so that all can realize the unsurpassed way.